I'm your host, Dr. Joe Dispenza. Let's begin. Turns out that's 95% of who we are. So if we don't address those unconscious programs, you can, and you're an integrated physician, you understand this, that you could have the healthiest, ketogenic, vegan, intermittent fasting, enzymes, food combining, and if you're living in fear, if you're living in pain, the cell is not in a state to actually absorb anything. It's in a state of emergency. In an emergency, there's no growth and repair. So can you teach
I've seen patients like that who do everything perfectly and they're like still sick. And I've seen people who like don't give a crap about their health, but they have the best attitude and they're fine. You know?
Because the body's believing it's in a different environment, and growth and repair is what does it. So then we said, okay, let's see if we can demystify the process. So the concept, the word meditation, literally means to become familiar with. If you look at the symbolism of it and you look it up, it's familiarization. So you sit down and you say, okay, I don't want to be unhappy. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to talk trash about people. I don't want to complain. I want to blame. I don't want to make excuses. I don't want to feel lack. I don't want to have an attitude that's telling me I can. It's too hard. That's the old identity, right? So the moment you start becoming conscious of those unconscious thoughts, the moment you become aware of your automatic habits and behaviors, the moment you can notice that this is actually guilt that you're feeling, or sadness or pain, the moment you can become conscious and familiar with those states of mind and body, if you keep becoming familiar with it, if you keep becoming conscious of it, you won't go unconscious. So sitting in a meditation to know thyself, most people all of a sudden, here comes the barrage of thoughts. Here comes the propensities and habits, and here comes the emotions. The body's saying, you normally complain at this time. What are you doing sitting with your eyes closed? Let's think of a reason why you can complain. And the body starts influencing the mind. So if you break it down to for a person to understand, how many times do we have to forget until we start remembering and keep remembering and stop forgetting? That's the process of change. So then you put a person in a meditation and they hear that voice, they hear that chatter, they want to get up and go to the bathroom, they want to check their cell phone, they want to feel angry, and instead of getting up and saying, I can't meditate, see, they're coming to the end of the known. So they want to go back to what's known, right? If you teach the person what to do, and you show them that on the other side of that is freedom, on the other side of that is joy, you got to become so conscious, and it takes a lot of awareness, it takes a lot of energy to sit with yourself long enough to disentangle from those programs. Now, we now know that it's a formula, that if you follow a formula, you will actually start pruning circuitry. You'll stop the conditioning process and move the body out of the past, and it starts liberating energy. And that's energy to heal with. That's energy to create a new life. That's energy to digest again. The body's no longer living in survival or living in emergency. And the majority of people's emotions then tend to be derived from the hormones of stress. And so that we started realizing that the arousal of the stress hormones, the rush of the chemistry, is actually tapping the body's resources. And the stronger the emotions we feel towards any problem or person in our life, the more we pay attention to them. And if where you place your attention is where you place your energy, then you're giving your power away to that person or problem. And if a person can learn to sit in the fire and say, it's not my boss, it's not my ex, it's not my job, it's not the pandemic, it's me. That this emotion isn't serving me because this emotion is the exact emotion that's pushing the genetic buttons that's creating disease. Okay, if I can keep practicing lowering the volume to that emotion, I'll keep taking my attention off that person or problem. And in a sense, the body starts moving back where? Into the present moment. It starts getting relaxed in the unknown. So we started teaching people the process, and by a person overcoming their past, not the trauma, just the emotion. They just have to work on breaking that conditioning process, because if you keep doing it over and over again, a habit is when the body becomes the mind. Now the servant, now the body's influencing the mind. So We teach a person then how to break that conditioning process. The body starts moving into the present moment. It's no longer in the same environmental condition. And then all of a sudden, we start to see some pretty dramatic changes in people's health. God, if you were to ask me, Mark, a year ago or 2 years ago, if I would think in my lifetime that I would be seeing what we're seeing in our measurements, I'd probably say, wow, probably not, but it's pretty ambitious, because sometimes we see such levels of order in our community's brains when they apply that formula, that we just found the articles that said that the mathematical probability of this type of coherence happening in the brain is statistically impossible, and if it occurred, it would occur as a momentary phenomenon that's random. And so our collective groups of people are sustaining these states for extended periods of time. So we can see dramatic changes in people's brain circuitry, but not only their circuitry, but this thing called coherence. And coherence is order, it's rhythm. So the antithesis is, if you're living in stress and you're living in survival, you feel like you can't control something, you feel like you can't predict something, and you have the perception that something's getting worse. And the arousal of those stress hormones causes you to shift your attention from one person to another problem, to another thing, to another place. And every one of those elements has a neurological network in the brain. So the arousal in the brain is saying there's an emergency, try to control everything, try to predict everything, prepare for the worst. And you start firing all these circuits and individually. You shift your attention to your boss, to your coworkers, or whatever, and you start causing the brain to fire very incoherently. And when the brain is incoherent, we're incoherent. And when the brain isn't working right, we're not working right. So then the arousal causes us to narrow our focus on the material world. As our senses become heightened, and we focus on everything that's physical and material, and we start over-focusing. That's what stress does. So we thought, what if we taught people to do the opposite? Instead of narrowing their focus on whatever is material or known to them, let's have them open their focus and broaden their focus and put their attention on nothing physical and put it on nothing, on space, on energy.
Yeah.
And if we can create what's called a divergent focus, is it possible that the brain would begin to fire more coherently? And all of a sudden, we started seeing the front of the brain talking the back of the brain and synchronizing areas together, and what syncs in the brain links in the brain. And all of a sudden, you see the person starting to feel more whole. You keep doing that, more coherence creates more energy. The waves start standing and they start building on each other. And when that happens, there's an arousal that ultimately takes place in the brain, but the arousal is not fear, the arousal is not pain or aggression, and the arousal is not is anger. The arousal is ecstasy, the arousal is bliss, the arousal is love.
That sounds pretty good.
And the person,
where do I sign up?
Well, here's the cool part about it is that when that occurs, the stimulation that's being created, and we see these high gamma patterns that are off the scale. The arousal that's taking place is not taking place from anything out there in the environment. It's not taking place from the sports car, or the wardrobe, or the movie, or the cell phone. It's happening inside the person, and all of a sudden, that's a new feeling. They've never had that feeling before, and they start feeling connected. The side effect of that is even greater levels of order in the brain, and all of a sudden, the heart gets very turned on, it gets very signaled, and the person is moving into an elevated state. And that kind of combination of energy between the heart and the brain causes the person to become creative, not a little creative, but really seeing possibilities. They're conscious of things they were never conscious before, and that's a greater level of awareness, and that's a greater level of energy. And so people all of a sudden start seeing synchronicities that start taking place in their life because they have a coherent brain and a coherent heart, and you got a Wi-Fi signal, and you feel connected to something. You don't feel separate. Stress causes us to feel separation and lack, and this feeling makes you feel whole, and all of a sudden all the things that you wanted because you were in lack, you no longer want because you feel like you have them. And that's the kind of place where you can relax more into the present moment and enjoy the sunset and enjoy the meal and enjoy the conversation and enjoy the connection because you're present. And I say that that's a skill.